So, when you've been around for as many years as I have making music, you're bound to come across the odd track here and there from your distant past that you have no real recollection of at all, and this is such an example. This track we call Crash and Burn. Actually, on the DAT tape that I took it off, it was labelled as Losing the Rush. And it sounds to me like there are various lyrical components that ended up becoming part of our track One Step Over the Line, which was a white label single we put out in between our first and second albums. Either way, this was probably written, I'm guessing, around about 1998 from the sound of it. So just after Metropole was released. It could possibly have been written before Metropole and was just part of the kind of initial ideas sessions that we had. And it's a really interesting track. I just came across it today. I was just doing a bit of a kind of remaster on it and just trying to wrap my head around, what's going on here. So you can hear that one-step vocal. So, this track was probably cannibalised for various other things later on down the line. Maybe we borrowed ideas out of it, but actually it's a really cool little tune. There's loads of stuff like this from those Lunatic Calm days. And I think in retrospect, we were just a little bit unsure of ourselves, unsure of exactly the perfect way to craft an album. And, we did what we did, but... That's a pretty solid groove. But as with a lot of these kind of notepad ideas, it's almost like a jam session that we used to have in the studio. And it wasn't that easy to jam because you've got to bear in mind none of this was done in a sort of audio way that we now tend to work. It was all kind of samplers and MIDI keyboards all linked together and all with their own kind of hard drives running stuff through a massive 32-channel desk. So there's no real chance of getting any of this stuff back, like rescuing the parts is virtually impossible. We have a few old sampler files, but I don't think we have any of the original system exclusive data from the MIDI keyboards. Perhaps we do somewhere. But it's just quite an interesting listen, just going through this track and seeing how we used to just throw these ideas together, I think it's got some really nice moments in it.
For 15 minutes or 15 years. For 15 minutes or 15 years. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares?
So as much as anything, this is like an exploration of a number of different ideas just to see what might work, what we could kind of tweeze out of it for a future version. So it's like a bit of an experiment. And it's really interesting when you skip down to the end of the track, so it doesn't really boot off and have this big kind of conclusion to it. All the heavy stuff's at the top end of the track, and then as we get towards the end, this is what happens. I'd love to have heard a lot more of that groove at the end, but it was obviously, that must have been the clocking off time to go to the pub, whatever, I don't really remember. But yeah, we just ended it there. So that is Crash and Burn in its undiluted, ripped straight off the DAT format with a bit of mastering for, for your listening pleasure. So I hope you enjoyed that.